Hey there, everybody, and welcome back to the Growing Band Director podcast. My name is Kyle Smith, and joining me is my friend and colleague Jeff Smith. Our mission is to share practical advice and explore topics that will help every band director, no matter your experience level, as well as music education students who are working to join us in the coming years. Together, we will discuss many aspects of a well-rounded band program, but most importantly, we will discuss concepts that help us all improve our own programs each and every day. Always remember the famous quote by Ray Kroc, "When you're green, you're growing, and when you're right, you rot." Let's get started.
All right, thank you very much. I'd like to introduce our guests today, Carol Brittin Chambers and Tyler R. Carey, authors of the new warm-up book, The Complete Warm-Ups for Band. And I'm really excited. I'm Andre Wilkins, band director at Salida High School in Salida, Colorado. Carol, Tyler, welcome.
Great, thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Absolutely. And as we mentioned just before we got started, the goal of today's episode is going to be cleaning up some vertical alignment between middle school band and high school band and make sure that we can come out of some of the COVID restrictions that we had over the past few years and make sure we're doing what's best for students in our band programs. So to get started, Carol, why don't you start us off and give us a little bit of your background and what you do and anything you want to brag about?
Okay, sure. So I'm currently a composer and arranger. I live in San Antonio, Texas, but I'm a huge fan of the mountains. We have a place in northern New Mexico, so not quite up as far north as you, but close. That's my love. But anyway, I'm also on the faculty of Texas Lutheran University, where I serve as the composer in residence and teach composition and some things like that. And then I'm the owner of Aspenwood Music. And before all that, I was a band director. I taught middle school and high school band mostly. I got my bachelor's degree in music education from Texas Tech University and my master's in trumpet performance from Northwestern University.
Right on. Tyler?
Hi, everyone. My name is Tyler R. Carey. I was a band director in Alabama for a few years, but I also had this great love of writing music, and I got lucky and published through Carl Fisher, which just so happens is how I met Carol. She just doesn't remember it. I played one of her pieces with my group, Cedar Canyon Sketches, and I sent her a recording, which always is horrible to do as a director. And she was very kind. They were very young, and they did a great job, but that's how I met Carol. And then just so happened that when I got the job here at Excelsior Music Publishing to be the editor and the production manager, that Carol also came along and started sending us music, and we formed a fantastic working and personal relationship, and we had a blast writing this book. So that's kind of a little bit about me.
That's a great transition for our first question. Why did you write The Complete Warm-Up for Band?
Yeah, so Tyler and I really wanted to create what we would consider a current valuable resource for band directors that would prepare their ensembles for rehearsal and for performance. And it would focus on establishing ensemble fundamentals as well as providing numerous exercises, that keep improving individual technique and skill also. That's part of it, of course. But we wanted the book to be very complete, so have a lot of exercises, but also very versatile. So meaning it can be used if you have a lot of time for a more lengthy warm-up, or it can be beneficial if, those days when you need or want to do more of a shorter warm-up. So yeah, Tyler, do you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I think Carol and I both get out in the classrooms a lot, and we get to work with groups. And the first thing that a group will do when you're there is they'll say, "We're going to do our warm up," and you're always like, "Great, awesome!" And you're sitting there, and sometimes I feel like you're getting this fishbowl look into a classroom, right? Because when they turn around and do their warm up, they're a little exposed. And one of the things that I found is that we see a very similar abridged warm up from lots and lots of groups, and it's not usually very intentful. So we're not, if they're playing a piece in E flat, usually the B flat scale is the biggest go-to, right? B flat or F, which is fine. We all did that. I did that. and I am 100% guilty of always playing the same Claude T. Smith chorale, no matter what I was doing. And while that's great, I started to realize that we would do this warm up and I'd see this warm up and then we would move right into the music and we'd spend about the first 10 minutes of the music fixing all the things we could have done in the warm up because we were trying to warm up the group without tying it to the music. And so one of the reasons why I wanted to do this book was I wanted to start forming relationships between the warm up and what we're about to play, but also relationships between the fundamentals we're learning and the repertoire that we're going to do from middle school all the way up into, as Carol likes to say, beyond. So
Yeah, and also just through this, you can really start to establish and form a vocabulary with your students. You're working on certain articulations and how do we describe that and what do we do? And again, like he just said, like Tyler just said, making all these fundamentals should transfer to music. That's the end goal, is that we get to perform and play great music. And so, so how can you make your time as efficient and meaningful as possible?
and a lot of warm-ups out there are older, so we thought, hey, a nice new cover would really spruce things up out in the world,
Yeah, no, I mean, that was part of my reasoning for going down this path of finding some new warm-ups. Not that the ones I've been using haven't worked, but looking for something new and something to collaborate with my colleagues on. Carol, you mentioned that the warm-up could be as short as you want or as long as you want. And one of our first questions is walking through a lesson. How do you prioritize when you have to, shorten your warm-ups? How do you prioritize what's needed to be covered?
Well, yeah. So all the time I was teaching, and then the group of other directors that I taught with, I felt very lucky. A big portion of the time I was teaching, I was with what I would call a team, and we were very much aligned, 6th grade through 12th grade. So that was one of my favorite points or times when I was teaching, because we were all on the same page, and we would get together and talk about, okay, where do we want our beginners to be around Christmas time and at the end of the year? And then what about when they leave middle school? And what do we want them to know when they leave our entire program, when they graduate? And what kind of music do we want to be able to play? What sort of goals do we have? Do we want to maybe apply to maybe get to go to Midwest or things like that? We just, we talked through everything. And so we would have many, times throughout the year where we wanted certain goals to try to be met. So we had some vision. And so it didn't matter if we were working with our 7th grader, because I like to refer to here it's about 7th grade when they're beginners, more like in 6th grade. I know some people that's more like 5th or sometimes even 4th.
Yeah.
Here we're more, what I'm used to is more 6th grade beginners. So 7th grade is sort of when you're in a full ensemble setting for sure. And then beyond, And so it didn't matter which age group we were working with, but we always thought it was important to, of course, always have every day reminders of posture, doing reinforcement of good breathing habits, because just because you tell them, as we all know, just because you tell them one time doesn't mean that's good. You got to remind them every day. So doing a little bit of that, and then focusing on things like steadier tone, stopping notes together. Then you start adding your fingers. Then you start doing more technique, scale pattern. So anyway, so Tyler and I kind of set this up in what we call modules, and modules, I guess, a fancy word for just an area. And so breathing, in your body, posture and all that, good tone, scales, which doesn't just mean scales, but, and Tyler can elaborate on this too, but just the relationships of keys. So that's all kinds of patterns, like thirds and so on. And then of course, technique, where in our technical module, that's where we start, providing exercises where you can work on different articulations, especially, and then rhythmic modules. So definitely we have pages of rhythm patterns, going into all kinds of meters and so on, and even getting into triplets, compound meter and so on. And then ensemble, our ensemble module has mostly to do with chorales. So that's sort of putting all of this together.
Yeah.
And it's we have all 12 major keys covered and most of the minor keys. So I guess the short answer, I have a long answer too, but the short answer is you could pick just 1 or 2 exercises from each module or from each area and get a very complete warm up. But then on certain days, or maybe more towards the beginning of the year, maybe you want to devote most of your rehearsal time to these kinds of fundamentals and stuff. So you can do more. And then of course, as they get older and progress, we've got plenty of exercises here. Yeah, I don't think you'll ever outgrow it, because there are ones that are more demanding than others. So
Correct me if I'm wrong on this, on me inferring this, but what I'm hearing is shortening the warm up isn't choosing which modules to leave out. You still hit all the modules. You just do the shortened version within each module.
Yeah, it's like a balanced breakfast, right? All those modules are what we're saying, and what I think that everyone in the band world might agree is that those are all the makings of fundamental development. So you really shouldn't leave any of them out. So the idea is that you should be able to hit at least one from each of those modules with as little time as 5 minutes. And that would still be a more balanced, complete warm up than just running through a chorale. And it will be effective to what you're doing in the music, especially if you can at least map out whatever key you're starting with, just as something simple like that. If the first piece is going to be in the F major, then we can just quickly go through and select one from each module in F major, and you should have a pretty balanced warm up.
Carol, you brought up 7th grade as your second year. I mean, there's a ton of beginning band method books out there, and they all do a good job. What is your expectation for a second year student coming in to be able to use this method book appropriately? And Tyler, you could jump in on that answer too. Carol just brought that up.
yeah. Well, okay. So yeah, because I wouldn't necessarily consider this a beginning book, because it just goes into so many more exercises that beginners probably aren't going to be doing. But for me, the non-negotiable is characteristic sound and resonant sound.
Oh, wow.
And so to me, you might not be in this. So when they get to 7th grade, they may not be able to do exercise blah, blah, blah yet, but whatever exercises they can do, we're still not compromising their sound. So, at the end of beginning year, and the reason I'm referencing 7th grade here is because a lot of schools around here also, not everywhere, but sometimes it's common for beginning classes to be just with their own instrument here.
Yep.
And so the first time they come together as an ensemble, like a complete ensemble here, is like more like second year players.
Right.
So this, I don't think, I've had people already writing me, hey, we are using this with our beginners. Of course, they're just doing the easier exercises. So you can do that. You can do that if you want. But this is more about ensemble setting. And so you're still always working on your individual skill of, am I producing the right kind of sound with a beautiful start to the note and a beautiful end to the note. But now you get in with an ensemble, it's now, can you start doing this? And maybe it's the simplest exercise in here, but are you able to now listen to the person on either side of you and match what they do? And, that's how we get rid of all that extra noise and clutter. Yeah. Ensemble sound is the more people can match vowel sounds and these other things. And so then you get into articulation. So whatever exercises they are at the level where they can handle, that's what you do, as long as they're still getting a good sound. And then you just keep progressing and giving them, again, developing their skills and starting to give them harder things.
I was just going to say, I like to think about exactly what Carol was saying about this idea that, the focus of the program should be the sound. I mean, without that, you don't have much. And so I kind of relate it back to when we're all learning in school about the band program and how to create a healthy band program. Our concept of sound, our good tone production is in the center. And then we have, the jazz band over here and marching band over here and all of the other extracurriculars that add in to creating that. And if you look at how the book's laid out, that's kind of how we do it. We end up at the ensemble sound, right? And so everything that we're doing is building towards good tone production, good technique, good precision, good flexibility, and all that stuff to get us to the end goal, which is the chorales, which of course should lead us directly into the music. And again, we're just trying to create this relationship from breathing at the beginning and getting your body ready to play to actually performing music, which I do think is a little bit different than a beginning method, right? The beginning method, we're trying to teach them how to produce, how to just play certain notes and how to learn these smaller intricacies. And then after you get past that beginning year and you start getting into second year, we start getting into what I consider to be more resource methods, which is how do we then take what we learned in the beginning method book and then translate it? And so that's kind of what this is. while also trying to be an easy resource for directors to be able to warm up their group without having to put too much effort into planning. So.
Well, thanks for making it easier on us for our planning time. We don't get as much as we used to anymore. That was actually one of the things that I noticed as soon as I got the book in the mail, which thank you so much for sending me a copy, was the body module. I'm not quite 100% sure how to ask this question, so I'll do my best, but what was your research isn't the word, but these seem like this seems like almost like a yoga class before band. So I'm wondering.
Part of it was just Carol wanted to make me have to do all these exercises to try them out. So that was part of it.
I wanted to see his drawings.
Nice. Yeah.
Look, Carol and I talked a lot about this book, and because one of the biggest things as just a composer in general, but as an educator that's writing resources is it's almost the imposter syndrome, right? It's real. We start asking questions. It's the same thing like doing a clinic. You go, gosh, there's Midwest level caliber directors in front of me at this clinic, and then I'm not a Midwest level caliber conductor, and then you start asking, well, geez, maybe the stuff we're putting in this book is just not needed, or it's just like duh for everybody else. And then we started to have conversations like, well, I didn't know all of this stuff when I started. And so there's going to be people out there that haven't figured this out yet. And the people that have figured this out, they don't need it. You know what I mean? So one of the reasons why we put that in there is because we really can't call it complete if we don't. And so we needed to make sure that we were being honest with the fact that a good warm up from start to finish, although I hated breathing exercises with my big breathing bag my teacher had, my spirometer and all that stuff, they were important and they helped me become a better musician. And so that's kind of our reasoning, even though there's probably, and of course, there's the breathing gym out there and it's hard to compete with that, but we wanted something abridged if you don't use that, just so you have it here. So that's mine on that.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's just more than anything a reminder, and then it just gives you some structure. It's like, okay, I don't know what to do. All right, I'll do this. We can breathe in for 2, out for 4. Lots of ensembles have the way they like to do it. For me, I think having some visual with your hand, having the students do it with their hand is nice. And what is important about that to me is, hey, you're not stopping your air and then letting your body get all tight. It's more one continuous motion. So again, it's, the teacher needs to know, why am I giving this exercise right now? And what do I want my students to get out of it? And how do I expect them to do it correctly? And so, everybody's going to have their own judgment and opinions about that. But it's just some things here you can do. And, maybe you had never done the one where you can do some stretching. But I think all wind players especially would agree that something of this in this area is important every day with your ensemble.
No, what I love about it, and I'm like, I want to hold this up as I look through it, and I really like that you're giving really clear direction for how students should be moving their body and how the airflow works. And I'll try and show this up. This airflow model, I've tried to do this in my warm-ups already without having all the resources of just using my conducting gestures to help indicate how the students should breathe. And that, with percussionists too, it's nice to have everybody on the same page with the same breath.
Mm-hmm.
It was really cool. I found it very helpful. One of the things that I really liked about the book as I went through is that you are using the term module. When I talked to my principal and we're going through at the end of the year my review, and it's not easy to talk music teacher to non-music teacher admin. And so the vocab words that you use in here, I really what I'm interested in is how to pre and post test using this method book so I could convince my admin that this is a worthy resource to use. And they need their buzzwords to make it more appealing, I guess would be the word. But is there anything you could speak to as far as how you would use this as a assessment that I could then turn in to show that I'm being an effective teacher?
I'll take the first crack at this one. I explained everything Tyler says is a metaphor or something like that. Sorry. But I
Well, that's
explain,
okay.
explain assessing students like or fundamentals, for instance, with band like budgeting a band program, right? And every administrator knows about the word budgeting and trying to figure out where money goes, right? But also, I think about it like exercises too, right? Like physical exercises. So, like the way that we're assessing students in music is we're setting goals, right? So, if you can create goals based off of, and I think this will tie into another question later, probably, if you can create goals based off the literature that you would like to perform. I mean, our literature is our textbook. It's the most important thing a director does every year is sit down and hopefully painstakingly figure out what pieces to play. And so that's our goal. That's where we are ending up. And so if you can tie in exercises and fundamental development from this book and show how it progresses into the repertoire that you are picking, and then have a successful performance of that repertoire. Or if you want to get even more in the weeds, successful pass offs with that repertoire or whatever. But if you can directly tie that to the method that you're using, I think that will create a line going to very easily follow. Especially in our book, we made we took care to add words that are meaningful to admin, like the word rigor and adding rigor.
Mhm.
And so like we can show that progressively from start to finish, these exercises in the keys that translate the rhythms that translate directly into the music that we've programmed. We have our spring concert. Voila, we now have assessment that shows that we have been on track to reach this goal from the beginning, and here's the proof, and it's all in the book. And I think that's kind of what I would do as far as and that's honestly everything I've ever found that admin really want is they want to see that you have a kind of goalpost and then a plan to get there that
Mhm.
is educationally meaningful. So
I just think it's easy to um, write down or whatever long-term goals, short-term objectives. So whatever short-term means, does that mean every grading period we want to,
Mhm.
assess that our kids are being able to do this? Does it mean every week? I mean, we had weekly little objectives that our kiddos would do, but all those are with the long-term goals in mind. But and just to be even more specific, especially some of these like articulation technical etudes that we have in here, or rhythmic technical etudes, we have a lot of
Mhm.
those. Those would be perfect for just little, if you want to assign like a little playing test or whatever you call it, or chair test, little assessments. Most of these are about 2 lines long. You could just do 1 line of it if you want it to even be that short. But again, just little nuggets that you can be, hey, you guys, this is going to be your pass off or your chair test or, for next week. And so it's always giving them little things to play. But again, the teacher has to know, why am I assigning this particular one? You have to lead your students in the building blocks, the blocks that keep building on what was there before. And so you have to have, you have to know the why and the
Mhm.
reason. Students don't really know, but you are leading them to these long-term goals. So
Cool. No, those are great. And I will definitely be implementing it that way. That's really good advice. Thank you. Um, the next question I have is using this book to choose literature. This is a question that came from our middle school director, Katie Oglesby. I told her I'd give her a shout out. And the question was, how do I know when my students are ready to go from grade 1.5 to grade 2 to grade 3? What is, and as a 14-year teacher, I was just like, I don't know. You kind of just do a couple Frank Erickson pieces and you see which one they could do well. um,
I thought a lot about this question in particular, believe it or not. And I think I think it's probably better to flip that and say, how do we use this book to get to the literature that we want to program? As opposed to how do I select literature based off of what's in the book? It's sort of like the cart before the horse a little
mhm.
bit. Because I think one of the things that Carol and I were trying to be very careful about with this is that we don't ever want this book to feel like we are telling directors how they should do things, and more of we are trying to give easily accessible pathways to success that we're not guiding as much as we are providing the opportunities for growth, and it's easy to get to. And I think you can kind of relate that back to that question. I don't have a good answer for that either on when I can tell you from a publishing standpoint where I know the grade level guidelines are and where I know ranges are for what we've learned in the method book versus what we've learned in the previous grade level of music. So where we should be able to go, now we've gone from a C to a D in the trumpets written, and I can tell you that. But one of the things I think is I'm gonna steal Carol's thunder for a second and say, I think if you can get them to play a similar grade level in this book and have it with a good resonant sound and characteristic tone and good ensemble blend, then you, as the expert in the room, are going to be able to make a very informed decision as to whether or not you move to the next grade level. And while we are excited to have put together the book, you're the expert in the room and you're going to know your students the best. And so my thing is, use the book to help you get to whatever grade level you want to get to.
Certainly, I think you can plan a little bit ahead. Like if there is a piece, a lot of times grade level and whether or not your band can do that, sometimes that really does depend on the range. And so, I think publishers have gotten a lot better about standardizing that and everything so that you can kind of know what to expect. Hey, if I pick a grade 3, my first trumpet's probably only going to go up around here, something like that. So range is sometimes what you have to look at, and it just depends on what skills your students do have at the moment. But I think you can, like, let's say you have this piece and you're like, okay, I think we can do everything. We haven't encountered this rhythm yet, though. Dotted 8/16, for example, or some little bit of syncopation or something like that. So you could then, of course, find some exercises in this book to reinforce that. Hey, I want to get my students ready for this piece that I want to pass out. And we're at the point now we can start to introduce this kind of rhythm, these patterns, So we're going to use these pages in the book, reinforce that, and then again, it will transfer to the music.
When you have an 8th grader that finishes up and is going to high school band, like in our situation, we only have one concert band at the high school. We don't have a tiered concert band, symphonic, wind ensemble. What would be outside our characteristic tone? And I'm really happy that you've made the foundation for that, Carol. It's good to be reminded of that. What's something you think a middle schooler needs to come out of middle school knowing for high school that we could say, this is, if you could do this, high school band is for you? And I don't necessarily mean to pigeonhole a student that isn't at that level, because some people start in 8th grade and they're just at their second years in 9th grade.
That's a hard question, right, Carol? Because like you think about all the different times in the eons of band when certain things are expected, it's kind of hard to put a to it. However, I think I was, and I know you said except for this, but that was kind of, if my students showed up from middle school and they had a good sound and they kind of had an idea about fundamentals, and they had some scale work under their belt, I felt confident if that development was there that I could take it where I needed it to go. And of course, I don't think the mantra of less is more applies here. I think as much as middle school feeders, and I absolutely adored my middle school feeders. I mean, they're the only reason you get to exist as a high school ensemble, because without them, you're starting from scratch.
Absolutely.
So my thing was support them as much as possible and get out there. And if you have expectations and they are willing to work with those expectations, you need to get out there and help them do it. You can't just say this is what needs to happen by the time you get to high school and expect your feeders to just have to do it. That's not their job. Their job is to keep kids in band and have engaged and fun and learn music there. But if you have expectations, that's great. But you need to go out there and do some legwork too. So that's a hard question to answer because every program's different. So like I said, my biggest thing, kind of like with Carol, was if they sounded good, I wanted them to have a good tone. That fundamental development of producing sound is really important. And then, I could take it from there.
Yeah. And I think honestly, just at the middle school level, if you just start that when they're beginners, the whole sort of like, this is what it's going to be in band, and you get them used to, we're going to have these little tests, but you make it just really fun. And you celebrate every time they reach. So we can talk more about that because we're going to talk about engaging middle students. Are we still going to talk about that?
Oh yeah, that's right. That's where I was going next.
I'll talk about that more in a minute. But generally, right from the get go, if they know, if if they kind of get, oh, this is what it is, I am expected to practice, but you set it up in a real positive way, then that is going to, just propel them through the different stages. They'll be ready. And if they have a love for it, and, they gotta like it too. So that's what's going to make them want to join up for the high school band, but just again, trying to get those skills. So yeah, it's the sound, but of course their technical proficiency, their flexibility, their range, just that those keep growing each year, and just letting them know there's a place for you in the high school band. It doesn't matter. You don't
Absolutely.
you don't have to be first chair. Yeah.
Yeah, this question came to me from a parent at our, high school welcome new 9th grade night, where a parent said, my kid didn't make the middle school honor band, but they still want to be in band in high school. Should we encourage them to do that? And it was absolutely, but that was, I didn't really have the vocabulary. You made it very clear just now about wanting to be in band. That would have been, I would rather had that answer for that parent at the time. And so that leads us to our next question. How do you get middle schoolers engaged to become, the band nerds that go on to high school?
This one's easy. See, this one's not a hard question. That's the.
I'm trying to differentiate here.
I'll start. Mine's short, so I'll start because I know Carol's itching to get to this one. I have never met a successful director at any level that was not engaged, passionate, and excited about what they're doing. And kids, they will 1000% eat off of that. If you show up to work and you are excited about learning the A flat note on your horn in the method book, they will be excited. I mean, it's sort of a show. You have to be passionate about, and if you aren't passionate about learning A flat today, that's okay, as long as they think you are. And so if you're excited about the music they're playing, one of the things that shocked some people in my community when I took over our band program is the kids went from wanting to play marching band all the time to playing lyrical pieces, because I am a sucker for lyrical pieces. And I just beat them over the head with the fact that we're making real music. This is exciting. Don't you feel that? Do you feel this? Do you get goosebumps? And I'd show them, look, I got goosebumps, and I got them into it because I wanted to be able to take it past just playing the notes and rhythms excitedly. And I wanted to I wanted to say something. And then they got excited because I was excited, and I could put anything in front of them, except for this one time I put a really, really slow Bach thing in front of them. It was like 40 beats per minute. They just weren't ready yet. I wasn't either. So we canned that real quick. If you're excited and you're gung-ho, and they will be too.
Yeah. FYI, I don't really want to conduct at 40 beats per minute either.
Right. Yeah. We're going to subdivide that.
my poor clarinet's just stared at me, just like, I hate you. It's like, I'm sorry. It's sight reading. It's good for you. It's like broccoli. Let's go,
Yeah, and you're into your healthy diet stuff today, Tyler. That's awesome.
I have always liked broccoli, even since I was a child.
I do too, I gotta admit. Okay, what I was gonna say, it's just funny because just the other day, I saw this quote, so I'm gonna throw her name out there, but Paula Kreider, she was doing a clinic somewhere. I don't know if you guys saw it, but of course, long time renowned music educator. And she was doing some presentation, but anyway, her quote was, "Fun is the joy of high achievement." So fun is the joy of high achievement. And I'm so going to tell her, I'm going to use that because that is totally, when I was teaching with this team of directors and stuff, that is what we really tried to do. It's like the stuff we're learning in band is going to be fun. We're not going to do all this extra silly stuff. No. Every day we have a plan. We're going to come in and you're going to get better. But students want that. They want to be successful. They want to sound good. They don't want to sound bad. They don't want a messed up embouchure. They want to sound good. They want to play cool, fun music. So of course, again, that's our job to get them set there with a great embouchure from the beginning and all that. But again, so that's where we would set up little mini objectives and stuff, and little ones that could always be met pretty much 99% of the time, as long as we're giving the right kind of instruction. And so some of these would be daily things, like tomorrow when you come in, I'm going to check for this or that, or weekly, and then we would make the hugest deal when they reached it. And, it might be, so it's a lot of constant positive reinforcement of things. But again, they don't know anything when they come in. They don't know what band is. It's just whatever you train them, right from the start. But sometimes it'd be over a tiny thing like, okay, remember I said we're having a pencil check today. This is more like with beginners probably, but pencil check. And well, Kelly has 4 pencils on the stand right there. So everybody give Kelly a hand, or Kelly gets to be first chair, whatever. It doesn't even always have to do with playing. I can remember one time I was teaching this again was probably beginners, but I was doing brass, and in the other room, my coworker, he was working with woodwinds, and we were nerdy about this, but he would just run and he said, "Hey, my clarinet's just learned such and such a scale, 2 octaves or so on. You guys come here. And we'd all get up out of our chair, and all go in there and they would do it. So we would do these little performances for each other, make a big, huge deal. Or someone, my flute just did the 3 octave, just things. And it would their faces would light up. So it's, again, setting up little goals for them, little mini objectives, and ensuring that they reach them most of the time. And they just get so excited about that. So it's kind of, and then, then that's all, they know that's what band is. And then they come together in full band. And there's not a lot of silly, this goes for behavioral things as well. But it's like, you sort of just send this message right away. I learned this from one of my mentors. We're going to have so much fun in here, but it's all going to have to do with playing. And by the way, I'm in charge of the fun. I'm the director. But we will have so much fun just celebrating each time you get better and better. So I think that's, how you just really get middle school, well, all of them fired up.
Man, that sounds like it worked out a whole lot better than all of us getting up to just go laugh at the drummers. That's a joke, everyone.
Yep.
Yes, we know.
But so this on our conversation so far, this is not a question I gave you beforehand, so I apologize. And if you don't feel like you want to answer it, or you're not, it's okay if you don't feel the need to answer it. But I've had a lot of not just students that want to be teachers, but also a lot of mentees over the past few weeks that are getting ready either to plan for next year. They're teachers that are in their first 3 years, and they went through the same struggles we all went through our first 3 years. So I'm curious on your thoughts on how you would explain this method book and how to use it, which I think you've already given a lot of great information in this. But for that first year teacher, second year teacher, that is like, I don't know, I played first chair, and I've never dealt with somebody that was happy being third chair. So, just curious on how you would explain this to a beginning band director, not teaching beginning band, but a new band director, on how to use this, why to use this. And yes, that's how I'm going to ask that question.
Well, first, I think it's important to say to all new directors out there, hang on, that first year is going to be whatever it's going to be. All right. It's all normal and nothing's weird. And we've all had the same thoughts. So first and foremost, I think just hang in there. You're going to be perfectly fine. And you're not going to do as much damage. Because for me, that was me. I remember I'm going to ruin these 6th graders. Like they're gone. It's like, I remember thinking the next year, looking at the 7th graders, I'm so sorry. We're going to try and make it up. I really, so first is just everything's going to be fine. And then the second thing, and this is the biggest thing, and hopefully you've heard this in college, this is the biggest thing that makes the most difference in any kind of teaching is consistency. Whatever you do, apply it every day. It's like, and Carol's going to make fun of me because I'm going to make, it's like losing weight. It's like, you might not think progress is happening, but when you look back on it in a couple months, progress was happening every day. Even if it doesn't feel like it. And so if you're trying to get them to sing, you got to sing every day. If you're trying to get them to sound good, you got to work on tone and intonation and producing a good characteristic sound every day. And that's a good lesson for band directors everywhere, because even professionals work long tones.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, yeah. Again, I think my one thing, I'm piggyback on what he said. Things are going to be okay, but also first thing I would say is just learn from others, and don't be afraid to get a mentor, and don't be afraid to ask, because we pretty much learned everything, honestly, that we know from someone else. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. there's already people out there that have figured things out. So just go watch others, invite them in, and be willing to be humbled, like, okay, come on. And be willing to accept, hey, this is what I'm noticing, not your kids never stopped talking. So guess what? They never ever heard anything that you had to say. So they didn't really learn much today. If you're willing to hear things like that, it's like, oh, how can I fix it? That kind of thing. So if you're willing to just get honest feedback, then put certain strategies in place, but not tons of strategies all at once. Just like with this book, just pick a couple of exercises to start with, out of each module or something. And again, to me, it's really important. Why at that moment are you going to have them do this exercise in the first place? And maybe it's just, I just want y'all to get your best sound. Okay, never mind, we're not starting together, stopping together. Okay, we won't do that today, but we got to get our best sound. And so let's start by singing and do a vowel sound. So just something, you can't throw everything at once for them to think about because it's too much. And you shouldn't teach that way either. So if you go in and I'm going to do one thing out of each module, let's say if we're talking about this book, why am I giving it? What do I expect to hear when they play this right now? And if you don't hear it, what did you not hear that was right? What feedback can you give to make it better? Hey guys, let's all just breathe together and start our note together. Okay, try that. Let's all, so it's just, again, not trying to just take on everything at once, I think, if that makes any sense.
Makes a ton of sense. It's good things for me to be reminded of too. That's not just for the beginning band director. That's for all of us.
How many times have we gotten on the podium and then suddenly you're sort of like overwhelmed, like, okay, wait, and then at some point we realize maybe it's around our third year of teaching. It's like, wow, let's just work on the opening 20 measures on this piece today, and let's slow the sucker down. And at some point you start to sort of realize I'm just throwing too much at them right now. Let's little chunks, maybe one concept. Guys, we're going to do it again. I just want you to focus on this one concept right now.
And sometimes it doesn't get better. I was just going to say, mine used to always scare me the day or two before the concert, almost like clockwork. The day or two before the concert, you'd walk in and it'd be like, we don't remember anything. And it took me a while to get to the point where I went, I understand what this is. That's fine. You little cherubs, just do whatever you want today, and then we'll pick up tomorrow and it'll be great. So.
Yeah.
Cool.
And again, if you, like they might not have it, they might not get it all the way today. And so definitely don't go on tomorrow to something else. You need to get that, we need to get this steady note or whatever it is. That's the foundation. We shouldn't be going on and then doing all this hard stuff. We're not ready. You have to be willing to be tedious, and you can teach them to be tedious too. But again, in a fun way, you celebrate, little successes. So.
Right on. We're hitting our last few minute mark from the time we agreed upon. So I'm going to close out, obviously first by saying thank you, but also I have some fun questions that you could take as long or as little as you'd like. And I'll just give you the three and you could answer them all at once. What is your favorite piece to teach? What was your favorite teaching moment and favorite moment as a music student?
Cool. I'll run that one first. Before I do, I'm gonna circle back to one thing because I thought it's an interesting. We do at the company we record about 80 or so concert band pieces a year. We sit a band on stage, and then they play tunes and we record them, and that's our demo groups for the stuff, and everybody can listen to them, listen to any of Carol's music or mine, and you'll hear that group. And I think it's important to remind students that are learning how to play that professionals also have the same fundamental needs. I remember we were playing, I'm going to pick on Carol, we were playing one of her pieces with the group, and they sit on this big unison G, I think it is, and it's this big unison G with a bunch of the low reeds and low winds, and they just were not in tune. And so we had to stop a professional group and say, hey, yeah, let's do that again. You need to listen to it. So, I mean, it happens all the way up. And I think that's important to tie it into the book, is that fundamentals happen from start to finish. So to pivot back to your question, my favorite piece to teach was always The Hounds of Spring by Alfred Reed. And I know that's a little lofty of a piece to teach, but I don't get to conduct that kind of challenging music too often. And so it's got so much fun stuff in it and so many so many characteristic moving lines. It's a joy to put together, and it's as Dr. Kreider would say, the end goal is going to bring you all the joy you need to do the work for that piece. So that's my favorite piece to teach, especially it's fun to conduct. My favorite teaching moment has nothing to do with teaching band per se, but everything to do with teaching band. We were playing the alma mater. It was my first year at this new school with seniors, and we were playing an alma mater that they had never played before. We had practiced it 300 times, and we get to the game, and we're in the stands, and it was one of the few things that I conducted that my drum majors didn't conduct. And so I get up, and this is, I don't know, we're probably 5 games into the season here, and I go to conduct it, and one side of my stands plays in one time period, and the other side of my stands, I think, is playing Pomp and Circumstance. And so I cut them off in the middle of it, and I yelled because it was in the middle of a football game and it's loud there. But I know it was the look on my face and the fact that I hadn't done it ever to them. And I remember my seniors, my 18-year-old seniors, just turning into puddles of mush. I just dying, because I was disappointed. And for some reason, that to me was a big click moment. And that was my favorite teaching moment, because I was like, all I did was point out that they did something wrong, and they had the wherewithal and the leadership to go, yeah, we did. And we're not happy that we didn't look good, that we looked, mediocre in the stands, and they were all just beside themselves. I didn't have to lift a finger. They punished themselves, and then I took them aside later and gave them a pep talk, and, it's fine. It happens. But, that was my favorite teaching moment. And then my favorite moment as a music student, because I'm going to, I guess, just be nerd here. We were playing County Dairy. I'm a euphonium player, and it's just ascending line that just keeps going and keeps going. You get to the big moment, man. It was the first time ever I got goosebumps and like cried while I was playing. And I tell you, once you hit that, it's like you're always looking for it and you can't ever find it again. It's miserable. It's like when you write a new good piece of music and you're like, this is finally it. And then the next piece comes along and you kind of stare at that old piece like it's yesterday's news, So anyway, so those are mine.
Okay, so favorite piece to teach. Honestly, I picked one that's more on the younger side, because I taught a lot of middle school too. But so it was called March Esprit by David Gorham. And so I don't know if people know that, but I just loved that march. And one year, in this band that I was doing that was mostly all 7th graders, it was a huge band that year. This new school had opened. We just had a ton of kids. And I had like 20 trumpets in there or something. And it opens with just little trumpets. And I was so proud because, it was just a really good teaching tool for them, but getting them to all match and sound, match each other and stuff. But it was a great piece. I loved it because it's very tuneful, but teaching a little bit of syncopation and style for that grade level. I just have always enjoyed that march so much. So anyway, favorite teaching moment. Let's see. Okay, well, I don't know, there's a lot, but one of them just was this in particular year. I had this crazy stellar group of beginning French horns. They were just on fire. They were so motivated. They just kept me on my toes, and they were hilarious. So we could just do the most fun things in that class. We would do stuff. We were working on elephant calls, and it was just these, working on their flexibility. But it was so cool. It was so good for them. And then we would also often with my beginner classes, we would draw things on the board about like the shape of our sound, and individuals would play and we'd go up and draw, that kind of thing. And somehow it morphed, I remember that year, into this elephant thing. And so every day they would add on to this elephant, and it was just this drawing on the board. It was just crazy. So I will always remember that class, and they just went on to become really good high school and beyond horn players and stuff. But that's just one of the most enjoyable long moments. It was all year I got to have them. It was really fun. Okay, and then my favorite, one of my favorite moments as a music student for sure, and this reminds me of Tyler's a little bit, but I was in the symphony orchestra at Northwestern, and we were playing Shostakovich 5, and we're in a rehearsal, and so I'm back there, trumpet player, I'm about to start counting. We were on the 3rd movement, the Largo, and so I'm back there just starting to count my rest, and the way the strings, I think this is one of the moments where I started to really listen to what else was going on. Pay attention to different colors and stuff, but it opens with those strings.
Mhm.
And I don't know why I was just so emotionally overcome, but I just started weeping, just sobbing, and I wasn't even playing, and I remember the other trumpets around me were like, "Are you going to be okay?" And I was like, I don't know. So I have no idea why at that moment in a rehearsal, I was just so overcome with emotion, but I'll never forget that. That was amazing.
Those are great moments. Thank you for sharing. Before we end, I want to give you a chance to plug your businesses and make sure people could be customers of yours and continue to perform your music. And also, I'd like to know any last minute advice you'd give to the growing band director out there.
Well, first, I think Carol, you should at least get a little note at some point when David sees that bump in his royalties from the shout out of the piece in a couple
Absolutely.
months. I'm gonna be a little broad here because I represent Excelsior Music Publishing. So I encourage everyone to look at all of our wonderful composers. We now represent Kendor Music Publishing, Wingert Jones Publications, RBC Publications, was based in Texas, as well as Excelsior Music Publications. And we I said that wrong. Excelsior Music Publishing. My boss will kill me if I say that. And we just picked up a bunch of great expanded relationships with composers like Carol, and so I encourage you to look at all of the music. We have 500 composers that have, for the last 70, 80 years across those companies, been big voices in the band world, as well as some awesome brand new folks and new voices that are up and coming. And so I encourage everyone to take a look. And of course, if you enjoyed some of the things we talked about, the Complete Warm-Up for Band is a great new resource. We put a lot of time and effort into it. Yeah, there it is. Great cover. And me and Carol are going to be out and about talking about it all over the country here soon. So come say hi and check it out.
Yeah. And I'd also just like to say thank you for having us today, for sure. And I've really enjoyed working with the Excelsior team, and so I've actually just become one of their exclusive composers. So that's been really exciting. But you can always email me with questions too. And please, either of us, if you have questions about the book or anything, just email us. You can look us up online. And it's been really fun. So we're excited, but we can't thank you enough for having us on today.
Absolutely. Let this bell finish ringing. My pleasure. And I'd like to thank Kyle Smith with the Growing Band Director for giving me the opportunity to talk to some big hitters in our world. And again, you are awesome, and I love performing your music, and just really grateful you took the time to help out the band directors, new and old. And this was awesome. Thank you so much.
We sincerely appreciate you taking your valuable time and listening to the Growing Band Director podcast. Your students are very lucky to have a band director like you. If you have any suggestions for episode topics or think you have an area of expertise to share on a show with us, please reach out. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe. And if you want to help spread the word, please give us a 5-star review and tell your band director friends to subscribe as well. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, our YouTube channel, and wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening to The Growing Band Director. See you next week.